When exactly did Daniel Jones become a franchise quarterback? Where was I at during this discussion? When did the vote take place? I didn't get a chance to cast my ballot. All right, y'all. I'm being a little facetious, but let's talk about this one for a second. What's up, Cerebral Football fans? My name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel. Hey, if you're new to the channel, this will be the first, second, third time you caught my content and you enjoyed today's discussion. I'm going to warn you, today's episode is a little bit like a baconless BLT sandwich because we're talking about Daniel Jones. But hey, we're on a journey, we're on a path that just crossed us over 6,950 subscribers. We're heading towards 7,500 subscribers. I would love for you to be a part of that equation and join the Cerebral Football community. We call ourselves the Cerebralites. I just need you to hit that subscribe button to do that. To my OG subscribers, hat in hand, here to ask you that favor, guys. Hit that thumbs up button, smash the like button, help me spike this algorithm and get this in front of new people that we could potentially convert into our little audience here on the YouTube. All right, y'all. Today's topic, we're talking Danny Dimes. So while evaluating this situation, this scenario, I mean, obviously there's going to be a little bias here, guys. I'll openly admit that. I'm an Eagles fan. But with that said, I try to come to these things and I try to look at these situations with as unbiased an approach as I can. And I try to use very consistent grading material when I'm looking at the player. And truth be told, I'm going to admit this as an Eagle fan. Daniel Jones has been far better protecting the football this season than I ever thought he would be. If I'm being upfront, if I'm being honest, I got to state that out, right, guys? You know, sometimes you got to drop the homerism and you just got to admit the truth. If you're an NFL guy, you're a football guy, you're a guy that watches film, the dude's not making a ton of mistakes with the football. But I want to talk about what I found out as I looked into the numbers, and I don't think that this conversation is ridiculous. I also don't think that this conversation is finalized. So, without further ado, by the numbers, I want to talk about Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, and kind of like what he's done on the season as a quarterback.
Lions cornerback Jeff Okudah out with a head injury.
That's a shame for him. Here's Jones back to pass, and it's intercepted.
The first line of conversation I have to start off with is he just has not committed a ton of errors with the football in his hands. He just does not put the ball on the turf. He does not throw a ton of picks. He has really, really kind of cleaned that part of his game up. And it actually ranks him quite highly in some of the statistical categories I'm going to talk about today. But I will say there are two sides to this argument when you look at the offense in Daniel Jones. And I think one side of this that has to be discussed is the fact that he's not making mistakes. But on the flip side to that conversation is there's not a ton of big plays coming out of the passing game with Daniel Jones behind the helm. That must be thoroughly investigated, thoroughly mentioned here. And I'm going to tell you right from the jump, guys, they rank 32nd in terms of plays above 25 yards, which is what they consider the explosive play rate. They have 16 on the season, which is obviously a terrible marker for an organization that wants to get more explosive as time goes on. They're tied with the Los Angeles Rams for the lowest in the league. Now, I will state this. That is not a great overall marker, and I've heard people get this wrong. I've heard some big-name commentators absolutely get this point wrong. Hear me out, guys. While their passing game is horrendous in terms of the big playability, it is one of the worst in the league, statistically speaking. When you filter it by total plays, in terms of like big playability, so runs over 12 yards and passes over 25 yards, the runs, they're ranked third overall in the league, guys. I mean, they have on the season 57 runs of 12-plus yards. So when you take that 73 total number, and you bring it together in terms of the big playability, you got an 11th ranked football team that's tied with the Dallas Cowboys. That's the upper third of the league. It's primarily through the run, but these guys do make more plays than they're being given credit for right now, if I'm being honest, guys. So with that said, he doesn't turn the ball over. In terms of the passing game, he's not creating a ton of big plays. But, you know, you do have to kind of factor in the fact that just like Jalen Hurts, I do think this conversation has some merit to say he is a part of the Giants' running game. He runs a lot of zone read. He runs a lot of RPO stuff. He helps the Giants gain extra bodies and advantage in the box. And by doing that, it has led that offense to become virtually one of the 3 to 5 best running offenses in the league.
What he's doing with this offense here in New York.
Jones going to run it himself. Get the block from Barkley. Daniel Jones in for the touchdown.
Saquon Barkley has something to say about that and has something to do with that. The offensive line has something to do with that. Daniel Jones does too. And I hate to say it as an Eagles fan, but Fair is fair. I can't credit Jalen Hurts for basically creating the most dynamic offense that's based upon his ability as a dynamic playmaker to break you down inside of an RPO offense and then avoid the whole conversation with Daniel Jones. So I just want to state that outright, that the numbers are here. On the season, guys, they have 57 plays above 12 yards in the run game, only 16 plays in the passing game. There are some crazy things to talk about here, like everyone being concerned that Daniel Jones is going to cook us. I don't see that through the passing game. He does concern me in the run game. But in the passing game, guys, I'm just going to be outright. I'm going to be honest. Counting the postseason, he has 3 games on the season where he's passed the ball over 300 yards. 2 of those 3 games came against Minnesota. The only other game was Detroit. So the only defenses and secondaries he's beat for over 300 yards happen to be terrible secondaries in Detroit and Minnesota. And by the way, 10 out of 16 games in the regular season, 10 out of 16 games, guys, he's been held under 200 yards passing. I am not as concerned as other people are with getting beat by Daniel Jones through the air. If that happens, hey, man, you put the game in Daniel Jones's hand as a quarterback, and if he beats you that way, you tip your hat to him, okay? I can live with that result. But I want to state this. I want to state this clearly because I do think that some people will get things twisted. There's multiple aspects to playing offense, and above any stat, if we're talking about, turnovers and turnover-worthy rates and all that kind of stuff, right? If you're talking about all these different factors, you're talking about big play rate, all that stuff, turnover differential, all these different factors, they all lead into one important statistical category that really judges offense, and that's how many points you put on the board. What does your scoring offense look like? And the Giants are middle of the pack, guys. 21.5 points per game, which ranks 15th, middle of the pack. So that's the basic numbers of how the offense is being operated behind Daniel Jones. But now I want to function and I want to filter into Daniel Jones' individual play as a quarterback. And if you guys have been following me for a while, you know there's 2 things in particular I track. I track your production versus pressure, and I track your production on third down. I think that you can filter a lot of BS out by looking at those 2 numbers. And I will tell you, Daniel Jones is a difficult case study to have here, guys. So I'm going to just give you the numbers versus pressure, guys. So when someone is moving him off his spot, hitting him, or sacking, that would obviously lead to a pressure as well. What do the numbers look like? 94 of 169, which is a 55.6 completion rate. I will warn you guys, don't look at these completion rates versus pressure and think they're bad. It's actually a really, really good completion rate versus pressure, believe it or not. 1,055 yards, which is the 6th most in the league, guys, versus pressure. And he only has like 3,200 yards on the season, so it tells you how good he's been in terms of gaining yards versus pressure. 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Here's the crazy thing, guys. This is where the conversation gets difficult. 10 turnover-worthy passes, which is the 12th highest mark in the league. But when you filter that by the total, he faced a ton of pressure. So when you filter that by percentage, so how many passes you put in harm's way versus the total amount of passes you had to throw versus pressure, that comes down to a 3.8% turnover pass rate, which is the 13th fewest. A little Jekyll and Hyde there. I'll get into what some of that tells me in a second, guys, but it is what it is. He has a 17, I think, 0.8 pressure to sack rate, which is right around the middle of the league, 15th, 16th place. I mean, Daniel Jones got a little mobility. He can be, he's a big dude, 6'5". He's got to be like 230-ish at least. I don't know his exact weight, guys, but he's a bigger dude. He has an 83.8% NFL passer rating, which is not bad. He's been sacked on the season 43 times, and he has 25 throwaways. What I took away from pressure is that Daniel Jones is not getting picked off, but he will put the ball in harm's way, but I will say that that's convoluted because he has to face pressure so often. Because of the amount of pressure this young man has to play per game, it's almost inevitable that at some point in time he's going to give you an opportunity. It's just teams haven't secured the ball but once on pressure, taking it away from him. And I do think that needs to be talked about. The second part of this conversation I want to get into, and I think is a probably a little bit less noteworthy for Daniel Jones. I think this is where he struggled on the season.
Jones looking the other way, though. Incomplete. Wanted Robinson.
On third down, he has 75 out of 130 for a 57.7% completion rate. Guys, that completion rate is pretty bad. It's difficult to do these things because you have to track who you're putting in and out of this. So you got guys like, P.J. Tucker. You got guys like Mike White. There's a lot of different guys. Sam Darnold. You have all these different quarterbacks you have to count for, and whether or not you're going to count them into, Brock Purdy, all those type of players. I counted in 41 in total when I got done with it. He ranked 28th out of 41 in terms of completion percentage. 783 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. So, once again, not really getting picked off. 16 sacks. 79.7, guys. 79.7 NFL passer rating. That leads him to be 33 out of 41 graded quarterbacks on third down. Let me end this conversation. Let's talk for just 1 second about what we're facing Saturday. Daniel Jones has developed into what I would consider to be somewhat of a dynamic quarterback. He's dynamic. There was a point in time that he was actually more of a vital part of his team's running game than even Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen at some junction of time inside of the season. With that said, do I think he's a franchise quarterback? I don't think you can know. The excuse I've heard come from Giant fans, and I got to give them a little leeway with this one because I do think it's justified, is that he doesn't have targets around him. He doesn't have guys to throw the ball to. His passing numbers are terrible, but who is he supposed to get the ball out to? I think it's illegitimate, but where I will pump the brakes from what I hear Giant fans saying is this. Yes, you can't grade it and say that he is or isn't good right now. We don't know. But you also can't just assume by plugging somebody in there he's going to be the dude. I don't know. You're in a little bit of a pickle. Same thing kind of situation we were with Hurts. Is that, hey man, we need to get talent around this guy. I think Daniel Jones needs talent around him. He needs guys who can actually catch the football. I think once they're able to establish that, then you'll get your answer. I think he's played well enough to probably be back with the Giants next year, if I'm being honest. But if you're asking me inside of this playoff game, am I scared to face Daniel Jones? I'm going to give you a resounding, no, I'm not. Nah, bring it on. I'll take Danny Dimes. Let's get it. Fly, Eagles, fly. All right, y'all. I appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see y'all on the next video.